My name is Will Christians. I'm the pastor at Shady Grove Presbyterian in Memphis, Tennessee. And I also serve on the executive team of MYCA, which stands for Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope. For MYCA, I serve as a co-chair for the training team, a position that I've been in for the last 2.5 years or so. And my responsibilities there is to ensure that that we are constantly building up leadership from within the organization and training members of our partner organizations the basics of community organizing.
And so in that, Will, I got two questions for you. One is, how did MYCA begin in the first place? Because it's a coalition of different congregations, right? Getting different congregations together and different faiths together can be difficult. And then second is, how do you then get partners to validate your work?
So MYCA's beginnings were at the tail end of 2016. We were a part of the Gamaliel Network. So the Gamaliel Network is a larger umbrella of community organizing groups that set up in different cities throughout the country, mainly in the Mid-South, Midwest region. They're centered out of Chicago. So Tennessee has two other Gamaliel affiliates, one in Knoxville and the other in Nashville. And we needed one on this side of the state in Memphis. So the folks from Gamaliel came to Memphis and got, I think it was about 12 pastors in that first meeting, and laid out what it takes for a community organizing group like MYCA to be built. And we went from there. I wasn't part of the first meeting. I came in about 3 months after that first meeting, but we grew kind of exponentially there for the first few months, because it was really blank canvas. Clear skies. Just what are the endless possibilities that we could accomplish. And so it took a whole lot of legwork right there at the beginning. Conversations. We went on a one-on-one conversation campaign where we sought out, I think it was probably somewhere around 5,000 one-on-one conversations with the partnering organizations, with folks within those partnering organizations, listening to them and fleshing out what are the most important issues facing the people of Memphis today. A partner organization is an organization like Shady Grove Presbyterian, Hope Church, a number of different churches throughout Memphis. We have 63 partner organizations right now. So it's Christian churches, Jewish synagogues, mosques, nonprofit organizations, and labor groups, all combined together to form MYCA. And following all those one-on-one conversations within the partner organizations, we came together and had what was called an issues convention, where we put up the top 10 issues that were facing the people of Memphis, and we, as a growing coalition, we voted. We voted to select the top 3 issues, and so the issues that were lifted up from the body were economic equity, education equity, and intercultural and immigration equity. And that's how we built our platform. Those are the 3 legs of MYCA's mission right now, seeking equity in those 3 sectors of society. And as far as the work being validated, the work is done by the people of MYCA. Everything, the people voted on these issues. Issues didn't come from a group of clergy sitting around a table one night and said, "This is what we need to work on." It came from grassroots. It came through these conversations, validated by the body at the issues, continually validated through the work of the partner organizations and those that are really putting their time and energy into seeking equity within Memphis.
So in that, now having it be validated by the community, building up these partner organizations, I think that one of the more difficult challenges for people is it's easy for you to get on board with change, right? It's easy for you to say, I think this thing is wrong. I want to do something about it. How do you then get people who were not sort of in that initial meeting to jump on board? Like, how do you begin those conversations with congregations who may be a little bit more standoffish or maybe don't understand what community organizing is?
So just to clarify, the work is validated. The work is validated by the partners. I would not go as far to say the work is validated by the community. Our goal is to have our work validated by the community. We experience a lot of pushback, from elected officials, from business communities, and from citizens that, like you mentioned, maybe don't understand what community organizing is, or don't feel that it is their place or the place of their or their institution's place to weigh in on systemic change. So the one of the constant efforts within MYCA is recruitment. We are continually trying to build our base. The bigger the footprint, the more work we can do, the more power we have. Power, from the Gamaliel perspective, MYCA's perspective, is the ability to act, and it's we act by organizing people and organizing money. So from our philosophy, the more people we have in our organization, the greater our capacity to act, the greater our power. So if you think of the 63 partner organizations in MYCA, so that's the 63 number. Well, each of those partner groups has a membership base. So it could be a small and medium church like Shady Grove, or a huge church like Hope Church. But all together, we probably consist of 55 to 60,000 people. Now that's not 60,000 people all doing the work of MYCA, but that's 60,000 people all represented by partner organizations of MYCA. And so we're constantly trying to broaden that base. And what we generally see, I don't believe we've lost any members. We haven't really done anything all that controversial at this point. Our greatest controversies, I suppose, are kind of wrapped up with our tension and disagreements with the mayor of the city. But it does seem like every time there's some event, something that is shaking the soul of the country, or the conscience of the people, we get a surge of people wanting to be involved. So right now we're in the midst of a surge of involvement and interest and passion following the murder of George Floyd, and the I guess you could call it the massive resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and so many people jumping on to that movement now. And so folks that we're not a part of MYCA, but yet know about MYCA's work, know that we are an interfaith and a very, probably one of the most diverse community organizing groups in Memphis. And so there's a lot more interest on people wanting to come in, see what we're about, and see if the work we are doing aligns with their self-interest and their vision of equity, whether that's racial equity, economic equity, education equity, justice reform, whatever it might be. If Micah's vision of equity matches up with theirs, then we usually find ourselves with another partner.
Yeah, and so one of my questions would be if someone's wanting to join in a community organization like Micah, what would be the difference in between what Micah might be doing and say what people who are protesting will be doing? What are the difference in their sort of short-term and long-term goals?
So I'd say it's a really good question. Protesting would be something that Micah would do. That's what we would call an action, and we have had actions before. Most often, those actions look like more like rallies rather than protests, because we have not trained our members, our partner organizations, in how to protest. You know, how to engage with nonviolence in the face of police officers or orders from the city. So because we don't know that our partners are trained or have those skills or equipped to be in a protest, we try to keep our actions slightly different. So Micah's work is always continuing. It's about relationships. Protesters go to the streets to express outrage, to demonstrate, and with the understanding, with the belief that protest has and will bring about change. It's a visual representation of people's power, people's emotions, people's rage, and that does bring about change. But lacking, for a protest to happen, you have to have some major spark. We don't want to have major sparks happen, because a major spark means that someone has died, a life has been lost to get people onto the streets. So with Micah, it's about relationships, relationships within the organization, and our relationships with those that are in power. So elected officials, county and city mayors, city councils, county commission, we have relationships with all of these people. And when I say relationships, I mean, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. One of Gamaliel's principles are there's no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. We are always working to expand our relationship, to deepen our relationship with elected officials and business leaders. So we are always in that conversation, and in those conversations, continually trying to determine if this person is an ally or an adversary for this issue. And if they're an ally, how can we use that? How can we use our relationship as a leverage? Or if they're an adversary, how can we use that relationship as a leverage? Constantly trying to pull those that have the ability to affect change kind of onto our side, and working with us to achieve our goals. So just an anecdote of something that Micah would do in terms of an action. So this is from our sister organization in Chattanooga, and I think I misspoke earlier. I believe there's a Gamaliel organization in Chattanooga, Tennessee. When one of their goals was to work with First Tennessee, now First Horizon Bank, to free up money for small business owners, particularly Black small business owners, as well as mortgages. And with the history of redlining from the First Tennessee Bank, what this group in Chattanooga did as an action, because they weren't able to get into the conversations that they wanted or get the results that they wanted, they went downtown to the bank and had just hundreds of yards of red fabric, and they wrapped red fabric around the entire building as a reminder of the redlining that this bank was guilty of. And so that disrupts commerce. People can't get into the bank to do the work that they want. So it is very disruptive, much like a protest can be, but it's done in a very focused and intentional manner to bring about the change that is desired.
Yeah, what I'm seeing to hear there is that, like, in a protest, protests are normally spontaneous movements towards some geared large action, right? That some incident is happening, people are protesting that incident and the injustice of that incident. The difference with community organizing is that normally those community organizations exist both before and after. Before, they are sort of working on the change, and then after, they're trying to enact the policies for that change as well.
Yep.
And so the protests, in the case of like George Floyd, the protesters might be saying, defund the police. Seems like one of the things that a community organizing group might be doing is figuring out what policies and procedures are in the way of defunding the police or in the way of having accountability there. And so without that community organizing force, what winds up happening in communities where there aren't this sort of large power system that can sort of call out injustice?
I mean, I guess what you would see is groups rising up quickly, but without without the ability for sustained action. Protests die out. Eventually, people stop going to the streets. They're whittled down into smaller and smaller groups until what you have left are. Just think about Memphis this morning. A couple dozen people camping out in the plaza outside of City Hall, and the police can easily handle a couple dozen people camped out outside of City Hall. What they can't handle is a couple thousand people marching down Main Street. And so protests die out because they rise up out of and are fueled by anger. Anger both of an individual incident, but of course that individual incident is also painting a picture of a wider systemic issue. George Floyd was not killed in a vacuum. George Floyd joins a list far too long of names that we know and names that we'll never know. And so when anger fuels the movement, it dissipates at some point. Also, when anger fuels a movement, you're going to have a lot of people jumping up to try to lead this movement. So you'll often see people that you've never heard of before all of a sudden in the front of the crowd, taking up a leadership position. And there's going to be multiple leaders, and each leader is going to be siphoning off certain portions of the population, and so we get splintered, and we become stuck in our silos, which happens far too often. And without the centralized power of a strong community organizing group, what you get is too many leaders asking different things, and everything just gets scattered. And without a cohesion, you're not showing the force of power that you need to show in order to bring about the goal of change.
Yeah, and so I can imagine the teenagers and college students who are watching this saying, that sounds great for adults, right? But I don't think I could do that. How would you challenge that notion that the only people who are capable of organizing are adults, people who are not in school?
How would I challenge that notion? Yeah, March for Our Lives.
Mm.
Yeah, kids down in Parkland. Yeah, that was community organizing. They weren't just in their neighborhood, in their city. They're going all around the country. But they started a huge movement, and did so with I assume without some of the without all the skills and all the training that is offered to community organizing groups. It makes you kind of wonder if they had gotten all the training, some of the trainings that are out there, which I'm sure many of them have had that training at this point. Just wonder what the sustained impact could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Most familial organizations are encouraged, and MYCA has one, to set up a youth council. So within the structure of MYCA, we have a subgroup of youth that are autonomous, that lead their own meetings, have voice and vote within the larger MYCA meetings, and have their own agenda. Our youth council is, they've met with the police director here, Director Rawlings. They want to work on criminal justice reform, police community interactions. So they are taking, and voter engagement. So they're taking issues, seeing issues from their perspective, sometimes a perspective that we might miss. Seeing the issue from their perspective and determining how it is that they can affect change, even as youth, high schoolers, I think older middle schoolers. As far as college students, we have one, really two college groups that have joined us, Presbyterian and United Methodist, so the Wesley Foundation, and a number of them are highly involved within MYCA, and not viewed as as not patronized, not looked upon as someone young or naive or incapable of joining the real conversation. No, these folks from University of Memphis, they are part of our leadership structure. We need them. We need their ideas, their energy, and just really basically understanding that no matter the age, if you're in this work, if you're doing this work, if you've figured out your self-interest, then we can be self among others, and join together to do the work for justice.